So cyber liability insurance is a very interesting type of risk coverage. It's a little bit different than other insurances. So we'll take a look at what the current market is, how it's changing almost week to week, and what the history is. Cyber liability insurance was first launched in the 1990s. Originally, it was to cover the dot-com companies, and those companies were very vulnerable to things like destruction of data, hacking, people getting in and changing code, and even computer viruses. But what happened is, in the early 2000s, some states like California passed some laws that required that if a company's customer data was breached, they had to notify the customer. So let's say if you're a major bank and somebody hacks into your system and downloads all your customers' information, name, address, phone number, social security number, driver's license. Now you have to notify all those consumers, and you may have some liability. You may have some costs to give them credit protection or to pay fees. Since that happened in the early 2000s, now cyber liability insurance morphed into something that was data protection and coverage for those losses. This is the biggest priority for cyber liability insurance now, even 20 years later. And there have been more data protection laws, but now you also have ransomware, where hackers know that these laws are in place, and they'll hack your system, they'll get your customer data, and they'll tell you, if you don't pay us a ransom, we'll release it or we'll delete it from your system. Cyber insurance is different from other types of insurance, like fire insurance or slip and fall insurance or GL, general liability insurance, because it hasn't been around as long. Fire insurance has been around for 100 years. General liability insurance has been around for decades. But cyber liability insurance has only been around for maybe 20, 30 years, depending on how you calculate it. And there's a lack of historical data, so predicting the cost of the losses is difficult for insurance companies, so therefore coming up with the rates is also difficult. Making it more challenging is, even if you knew exactly what the losses were for the last 2 years, it changes. This year and next year we'll have different types of losses because hackers and cyber protection is morphing every year into different types of risk and losses. As an example, exfiltration of data is now becoming more popular than just hacking and ransomware. Even as recently as 3 years ago in 2019, cyber insurance had to scramble quickly to cover the reality of ransomware attacks. This was a version of malware that was different than just scrambling systems. It used to be that, black hat hackers would go in and lock down a system or erase a system just for fun. Now they lock out people from their company's records until they pay a ransom. And usually they get the ransom in some type of digital currency, so that way they're not trackable as a hacker. What this did was it raised the rates for cyber liability insurance at first because it was happening. But as smart cyber companies realize that they can mitigate these risks by requiring their insureds to have certain type of protections, they put that into their underwriting. So if you're applying for a cyber policy, they're going to ask you, what are your policies for cyber defense? Do you have two-factor authentication? Do you have proper password management and firewalls within your data? If you have that, you may be able to get more reasonable coverage and more reasonable premiums. In reality, the insurance companies, they don't want claims any more than you do. So they're going to help you as an insured reduce the frequency and severity of cyber attacks. They're going to do that by sharing the data from other insureds to help you put policies in place in your company to keep you from having a claim in the first place. Two-factor authentication is one of those things. Another one is called endpoint detection, or EDR. And this is a tool that will detect and block malware before it gets into a network. And it's a way of matching and verifying data coming into your network. Also, with exfiltration, there's monitoring of large volumes of data coming offloaded from your system. The fact that these insurance companies have seen even 10 or 15 years, they have this lost data, and they can use this to help prevent future losses where you as a company may never have seen a cyber loss. The insurance company knows what's out there and they can help you prevent it. And by putting those policies in place, you can prevent a loss in the first place and maybe even get better rates. The other thing to look at is the losses are coming not necessarily from accidents. If you have a fire in your building, God forbid, or you have some other type of damage, or you have a liability where a consumer sues you, those are usually not accidents. Those are usually accidents. The problem with hacking is hackers are doing this on purpose. They have monetized cybercrime, and it makes them a lot of money, and they're innovative. They change to adapt to prevention and defense against the threats. A good insurance company will help you see that and put things in place, and maybe even quarterly or semi-annually tell you about the new preventive measures you can put in place, and sometimes even require them as a prerequisite of keeping coverage. The bottom line is that cyber losses and cyber risk are not going away. Everything is going more digital, and the digital economy is expanding. So there's going to be more vulnerabilities, not less, but there'll also be more technologies to defend against it as the cyber defense and cyber insurance markets start to come together and help companies prevent from having a loss. Because look, your worst day is going to be when you have a loss. Even if you have insurance for it, you're still going to be faced with a very challenging workflow for that day, week, month, even for several months. The fact that there's $10 billion in premiums for cyber insurance written in the last 12 months is a big deal. They're estimating that not too long in the future, there might be $50 billion in premiums written within the decade. So if you have questions about cyber insurance, you can check out our website. We're glad to be of assistance. Remember, get with a good insurance agent or broker in your area that covers your business to get good coverage that matches exactly what you want.